photo on the first slide is the dreaded egg. So whatever you do, please get rid of your egg and put some sort of photo there. A headshot of you is better, but if you don't feel comfortable doing that, that's fine. Just put something other than an egg there that somehow represents you. I'm going to go to the next slide. All right, so when you see an egg, why don't you want it there? It's pretty much like when you find out someone in your family who perhaps is older got an email account and they discovered the forward button. So when you see the forward, 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 it just shows that they don't really know what they're doing, and clearly you don't want to read that email, and you feel similar to people who have an egg. They've shown up and they don't really know what they're doing, and they could be a spam bot as well. When you're doing a profile, don't fill it with a bunch of hashtags. A lot of people do that, and it only really helps if you're looking for a very specialized niche group of people who know what the hashtag is, and it's just harder to read. You have very little space as it is, so I wouldn't fill it up with hashtags unless there's one specifically that represents what you do. For me, I have one that I use, which is Team He for She, but it's a project I'm working on ongoing, and people specifically look for it, so I do include that one, but just be very judicious when you're thinking about what to put there. So basically you want to describe who you are and what you do in that little space. There is a spot where you can add a web link for yourself, so it'll redirect to that website. So if you want them to know you're an academic, one of the academic sites is probably good with all of your CV information. If you're a speaker or you have some sort of business you're trying to promote without being obnoxious with ads, you can put that there. Just make sure you know why you're sending people there. So that's what you want them to know about you and also what you're representing. Okay, so first, know your social media has a purpose, so know what it is. For me, my Facebook page, and this is where I feel like I sometimes offend people because I don't accept all my friend requests. I've got hundreds in my queue, but Facebook for me is personal, just a normal page though. So my personal Facebook is locked down. I make it so my pictures can't be shared, all of that. It's people I would call on the phone. You and I have each other's phone numbers. They're people I'm related to, people I might have went to high school with, and I'd stay at their house if I was in their city. So that's how my Facebook is organized. There's also Facebook pages. So you can have teacher pages, public profile pages, and it works similarly, except that you don't see everybody's feed. So you could have hundreds of followers, but you won't see everything that they're posting. We don't have time for that. You can't read all of that, and you just can't invest that much time into so many relationships. So people can still inbox you, send you messages through Facebook, but it's not going to be using all of their feed. So this is my personal and professional feedback in order to focus on your own relationships at home and that are important to you. Don't make your Facebook page that's personal a public page. All right, so Twitter for me is the opposite of Facebook. It's a news feed. It's not my cousin's baby photos. It's people I might want to meet professionally, people I've met at conferences or in a tweet chat, causes I care about. And this is where I make sure I'm following specific hashtags. I do have friends on Twitter, but they're usually friends that came from Twitter or friends that have professional interests that dovetail. So I'm not really following my friends where we don't have similar interests. This is where I'm getting a lot of my news and updating recent research, that sort of thing. This grows enormously. I've had more speaking engagements, made new friends, had really interesting meetings when I'm in different cities with people that I met on Twitter. The other thing I personally use it for when nothing else is working is tweeting to customer service, whether it be an airline or the washing machine. When you can't get anybody on the line, you tweet them, and it's very quick. And that's just because it's public. It now shows up in Google searches, so companies want to look good. Okay, so all of your posts, make sure you're thinking this is public as it is. Even if it's your personal Facebook page, people can screenshot now. Making mistakes and typos are fine. With Twitter, just delete and repost it. If it's something that you're going to be okay with and you're going to sleep fine at night, it's a little typo, Leave it alone, it happens, but don't make a habit of it. Also, one thing that's kind of tough is after you've tweeted something, you realize I completely spelled their name wrong, but you already have 20 reshares and 100 people have liked it. It's a little awkward to take it down. But here's an example of Naomi Campbell, who, when Malala won the Nobel Peace Prize, she called her malaria. And it's horrifying, really, because you put that out there and all of these people have seen it. And I did something similar, and it's autocorrect. Same thing. And I was in New York City and I posted something about Malala and congratulations. And it autocorrected to masala, like the sauce. And I had a ton of likes. I think most people didn't notice. It wasn't quite as obvious as malaria, but it autocorrected. So sometimes you don't notice until it's already been posted. Okay, I'm going to flip screens to make sure I don't have any pressing questions or serious issues. Okay. Looks like we're okay. All right, next. This is where everybody gets confused and they say, forget Twitter. I don't know how to do it. When you're tweeting, if you put that @ sign in the very beginning, that's just for that person really to see. It doesn't make it not public, but it's not going to show up in all of your followers' feeds. So if you have 1,000 or 2,000 followers and I say, @Dr. Smith, great to see you at the conference yesterday, only Dr. Smith is going to see it. The rest of you can see it publicly if you go on my screen, and there'll be, it has all of my tweets. And then the second tab, I think, is tweets and replies. And then you can look there to see who I've been talking to. So it's kind of like looking into my public inbox, but it isn't going to show up in everybody's feed. So if it's something you want people to see, don't start with an @. A lot of times you'll spend time crafting this tweet, promoting something that you're working on, and then nobody sees it because all you did was send it to that one organization or that one person. Private messages only work if you're following each other. So that's like having an email. Nobody else can see them. It's called a direct message. So if you want it to be public and go into your followers' feeds, don't start with the @ sign. And some people find it incredibly awkward not to use someone's name in the beginning of a sentence. So for those of you who are trying to get the attention of somebody in particular but want everyone to see it, especially when you're praising somebody or thanking them for an honor, you can put dot in the beginning. Anything that's in front of the @ will make it so it's public. So if you want to say, Dr. Smith, it was an honor to meet you and thank you so much for sharing blah blah with me, you could just put period @Dr. Smith, and then everyone would see it. So the trick is just not starting with an @. All right, next, retweet. It's the laziest, quickest way to keep your feed going. So if you have a lot of people that you follow that are always posting really interesting things, you can just post, retweet what they tweeted, and it'll just go directly into your own feed and all of your followers will see it. What's new, and a lot of trainings aren't telling people about quite yet, is a quote retweet option. So when you click on retweet, it looks like a box of arrows going in kind of a circle and a box to the left. When you click on that icon, it'll give you an option to just retweet or quote. So it will embed that tweet. And if you want to, you can make a comment about it, but you just don't have as much room. You don't have that 140 characters. You'll have less, but it'll also show the photo and the tweet of what you're responding to, which is helpful for context sometimes. That's where people tend to get lost on Twitter. Here's an example. Okay, so this one was, originally quoting me. And then UN Women is making a comment to what I said. So at the bottom there, you can see that's the photo I took, and this is what I had said. And then at the top, they're responding to, yeah, I can't believe it either. And it's sharing my photo and tweet. So you can get the context, and it's a nice tool. All right. So who should you follow? If you got my email last night, I said try to find 5 social workers, since this is meant for social workers. And causes are people that you want to follow regularly. And you're going to find that some people that you like in person, you're not really specifically wanting to follow their Twitter feed. And there's nothing wrong with that. Clean up who you're following as your interests provide. You don't want to be having to feel like you're reading spam or just really disinteresting things all the time. That's a bummer. All right, coming back over here. Linda.
Hi.
Hey, I can see you. Welcome.
Thanks. It took me a little while to get in.
Oh, completely fine. I'm not sure. It's been coming and going, and I think some people are a little confused on how to get on here as well, but it doesn't really matter because it's all going to YouTube.
Okay.
So whatever we're done here, people can watch it later. So some people were stressed thinking, I'm not going to be able to see it, but it will all be here.
Is there anybody else? I don't see anybody else.
Yeah, and there's 25 that are on there, but there's 9 on here right now. But I didn't want to keep everybody else waiting, so. And there's also the YouTube, which I can't see. So there's a YouTube feed that plays off of this one.
Okay.
So I'm going over the basics right now. All right, it shows me that you joined the group chat, but I can't see everybody else. All right. I'll go back to the PowerPoints. I was just going to go finish the PowerPoints, go through those quickly, and then see if there's questions. But they're not too detailed because I'm trying to keep it on the simple side. All right, and with doing Twitter as a business card, I call it my lazy business card now, and I love it. You can probably tell when I've gone to a conference, you can see who I've just met because you'll see that's who I've recently followed. And it's a lot easier than taking home bags of business cards and trying to follow up with emails. Definitely do that with the people that you're sure you want to connect with, but it's also a good reminder for me who I wanted to contact. And it also, that way you have access to the website they've provided, their profile, all of that with just a quick, oh, what's your Twitter handle? So you just type it in, okay, I'm following you now. And then they can see it pop up on their screen and they can follow you back. So you have like a 20-second exchange and it's already recorded online for yourself. All right, so followers, don't get obsessed with how many followers you have or who's following you. But the rule of thumb right now is don't have a big imbalance between how many people you follow and who follows you. If you're following 2,000 people and only 100 are following you, you tend to look more like a spammer. And if you have the egg, forget about it. Just cultivate a community you actually want to read and write about things that you are about or want to promote, and you'll grow naturally. So don't spend too much time trying to create some image of yourself. It's important to, stay professional, but you also want to have personal bits of you as well. So just be yourself and share the things you're interested in, and then you'll end up growing a group of followers and people that you follow that you're actually interested and engaged. And you also don't want to spend a lot of time just reading things you don't care about. Okay, the things not to do, don't follow just to get followers. You're going to waste a lot of time reading spam. That's old advice when you start Twitter, is just to follow a bunch of people and then you'll get followers, which is true. But most of the people who are going to follow you back aren't people who actually care about following you and don't actually care about your message. They're just trying to build their numbers. So if you do that, you're going to waste a ton of time reading spam. You're going to say, Twitter is not for me. This is terrible. But that's because you just followed 2,000 people that are sending these notes like, buy 200 followers, or we'll give you 10 followers if you follow us. So for me right now, I'm trying to keep it at 500. That's about all I can handle on how many people I'm following. So don't follow more than you can keep up with. Clean every so often, especially in the beginning. As people grow, they end up following more people than they can keep up with. But go through and clean every so often. It's easier to do when you're on your computer screen for Twitter. You can see everybody you're following and it'll show whether or not they're following you, and you can make choices based on, well, should I unfollow them if they're following me? One other thing not to do, which a lot of people do when they start, they're thinking, I just want to be a source of inspiration. I'm just going to do quotes. And oops. And they overdo the quotes. Inspirational quotes and memes every day. And that gets old really fast. So definitely be inspirational and do that on occasion, but maybe not all the time. There are some people you're just going to want to unfollow. You can't stand looking at their feed, but you also don't want to unfollow them because they'll notice there's these programs that tell people who's unfollowed you, and they get very upset. So it's not really worth dealing with some of the folks that you actually know or know of to unfollow them. So you can also have the option of just muting them. Etiquette gets really sketchy with Twitter, and some people get upset. So you can make the decision whether or not you actually want to unfollow them or just mute them so you don't have to read their feed. All right. Photo quick tips. If you include a photo in your tweet, it generally gets twice as much activity. And it also takes up space. So if you include a photo, you're going to have a shorter tweet. If you share a photo with a link, even shorter tweet. But a lot of times those are some of the best tweets because you're letting the photo speak for itself and you're sending them somewhere. Okay, so this is where sometimes I offend when I'm explaining to people how I think Twitter should be used, but not everyone agrees with me, so you can make your own decision. But I can't handle reading tweets that are odd fragments full of hashtags or missing letters. I feel like if you can't get it into 140 characters with real words, maybe you should write another tweet. Even if it's not a complete sentence, close is good. So here's an example I just made up last night. Hashtags that make no sense. Having so much fun hashtag today. Green eggs and spam and at whoever. And then they start taking out vowels or letters so you can figure out what the word is without wasting more letters so they can fit it in the 140 characters. And it makes no sense. People don't want to read this, and some people do this all day. So these are the people I end up muting or unfollowing just because my brain can't take it. Maybe you're different, that's fine. But I just want to point out a lot of people don't like this. So if you do it, you might lose followers. All right, so if you have new followers and few followers, and you're just new at this, and you don't use hashtags, few people are going to see your tweets. So the best way to get started a lot of times is at conferences or joining Twitter chats where there is a hashtag. So put hashtags at the end of your sentence or your comment as much as possible. If it works in a sentence and you're using it specifically, like a hashtag, like social work's a hashtag. So if you use hashtag social work, it makes sense as long as the whole sentence makes sense, but don't have a bunch of hashtags along with social work in your sentence. Hope that makes sense. But all the hashtags you want to use to bring people to read your Twitter feed should go at the end. And I put hashtags and hashtags because you'll see it over and over. And PowerPoint and Word hate hashtags is one word, and it automatically corrects. So I'm just showing you this is what it says, and I don't know if there's a right way. Okay, so ongoing social work hashtags, like I said, social work, macro SW. Know when you use something that specific, you're talking to a macro social work crowd. So if you want all the macro social workers on Twitter to have a look at what you're posting, you might want to make it really specific to macro social work. A lot of, say, the macro social workers aren't necessarily looking at the social work ones. And you only have so many, only have so much space. So you can't put 12 hashtags on there. So you're going to have to pick and choose according to the tweet you're making. And then ongoing cross-discipline hashtags are what I use, are social good, Action 2015, it has to do with the UN goals, but it all related to poverty and healthcare, most of the things that we care about, and they're great crossovers. And 2030 Now, that's been ongoing for a while now. So those are current issues and just trying to improve the world.
What is 2030 Now?
2030 Now is, I think it started a year or two ago. Social Good Summit, it's Mashable. You know, have you heard of Mashable? It's one of the big websites. They work with Gates Foundation, and they do Social Good Summit every year, and it's in New York. And then also the UN's using it now. So this year is a huge year because it's post 2015, which is why it says Action 2015. So this was like a 15-20 year period of measuring and evaluating, and so now we're trying to see how well we've done with reducing poverty. There goes a truck. Infant mortality, things like that. And so this year is huge. So we're talking about what the goals for 2030 are going to be. So 2030 Now has been going on for a couple of years, saying we don't really want to wait till 2030 for equality. We don't want to wait for 2030 to get infant mortality around the world down. So anything that has to do with these grand issues, 2030 Now is pretty good. And over the 2 weeks during General Assembly, it's going to be very busy, those 3 hashtags. And so it's a good way to jump into a stream that's already happening and seeing what other people are talking about. And it will also help you gain new followers if you make relevant tweets with those hashtags outside of just social work discipline. Okay, I said hijacking hashtags can go very wrong. You'll see trends. Oh, look, I should just tweet something with the trend in it, and more people will see it. And it can go very wrong. And so why I stayed, very social work related, has to do with abusive relationships. And a lot of times companies and advertisements will jump in on whatever the trend is. And so they saw that why I stayed was trending, and they posted, "You had pizza." And it turned into this huge public nightmare and mess. And they had to apologize. They apologized individually to all the people they'd offended, and it got ridiculous. So before you go jumping on a hashtag, make sure you know what it's about. All right, so an example, let's pretend we're at the upcoming CSWE conference that's in Denver.
Yeah, I'll be there.
Yay!
Yay!
And I'm not sure if CSWE 15 will be a hashtag. I'm just guessing something like this will be the hashtag. So
I think it might be APM 15.
Okay, APM 15, that'll work too. I'll add that on there. And so whatever the conference hashtag is, there's always one. It's specific to that few days. So you're not going to want to just post APM 15 or CSWE 15 after that few days, because no one's going to be checking that hashtag anymore. But it's one that you want to include while you're there for that few days. So say you're in conference room 4, and I'm sorry, maybe you're bored, or you're just wondering what's happening in conference room 2. You wanted to go to both sessions. You can go on Twitter and see what's happening in the rest of the rooms that you're not able to be in. Then there's cause hashtags, which the Special Commission, I know this one's coming up, 20 by 20, which is just about getting 20% macro social workers as students by the year 2020. So 20 by 2020 is a cause hashtag related to the CSWE conference. So if you put both of these here, maybe like Linda, you know what APM 15 was, but maybe you're like, I don't know what 20 by 20 is. What's that? So then you'd click on that hashtag and you'd see the tweets being made by people who do. And so you'd get an education pretty quickly by following that. And then if you want people outside of the conference to see it, maybe you'd add social good, maybe you'd add 2030 now if you're talking about poverty. But again, each one of those hashtags takes away from your original 140 characters. So you pick and choose wisely. So right now you can try it out if you want to. I got a couple of emails before this started asking, how do I know if you got a Twitter account? Well, tag me in it, and that's when you do the @ sign. So you can post a sentiment about why it's important for social workers to connect with the hashtag social work. Just make it really generic at the end. You can add a photo and then just tweet it out. The trick right now that's newer that you can do to tag people or organizations, you can do up to 10 on that photo. So after you've uploaded that photo and it takes up some of your space, it'll say who's in blue, it'll say who's in this photo. And you can then add up to 10 people or organizations. Some people block you from doing that because they get tagged too often. They don't like it. But that way they will see it without you having to put a bunch of at Dr. Smith, at, at Joe Smith, at whoever, at organization, at a COSAR, whatever. And it doesn't mess up the tweet as much. So it will look cleaner and nicer if you use that photo option. So that might be getting too intermediate, but it is a good trick.
Yeah, I just discovered that one.
Okay, yeah, good. And there's a subtle difference between, hey, I wanted you to see this, you're in this photo, which is what it's really meant for, or hey, this tweet is about you, or I'm crediting you for saying this thing. So it's really nuanced, and I think there's etiquette coming out on that. But don't go tagging people all the time for everything, because it's going to be to where they don't see it or don't pay attention. So be able to ask the question, why did you @tag me, or put me in that photo? Mm-hmm. There's a guy with the blower. Not right now. Not right now, no. Okay, thank you. All right. So a good sample conference tweet would be, gosh, can you hear that? Okay, inspirational panel led by @jmay discussing why we need at least 20 of social work students to be macro by 2020, and then adding those 2 hashtags. Mm-hmm. Okay, so those who are looking at the conference as a whole from another conference room or the plenary will see it. or they're not even there. They can't attend the conference but want to know what's happening. And those who want to know about the 2020 campaign and they're looking for it, or they just happen to see it. And then you can add the other ongoing relevant hashtags. So I know it gets a little confusing after this, but just know there's a difference between the ongoing hashtags and the ones that are specific to an event. And the last trick to let you know is on the hashtags, instead of saying, I don't know how to find it, I don't know how to do it, whatever you see in your feed and they have a hashtag for CSWE or social work, all you have to do is just touch it and it'll open all of the tweets that are under that hashtag. So that category will just pop up and you'll see what everybody's been tweeting about in the order they've been tweeting it. It's very easy. And it's a great way to keep up. So that is all the PowerPoints I did. So Linda, what do you think? What would you add?
I think you covered a lot. I see your final tip says don't be all business all the time. So can you give some examples of that?
Well, the whole, people joke about, I don't want to know what you had for lunch today. But sometimes they do. But don't talk about lunch every day. One of my favorite congressional reps always tweets about the restaurants in town, and it's kind of a running joke now, and it's actually kind of cute. But he will always post, had great ice cream at XYZ. I love this district. Every single personal tweet is that. I love this district with a photo of whatever the food that he's eating is. And at first you're like, this is ridiculous. But it is kind of funny that this person does it. But you want to mix it up a little bit. Don't make it too personal. I try not to, post photos so much of your family. I'm not saying don't do that at all, but making them more generic if you do. Be careful about sharing too much information because this is public. This is as public as it gets, and tagging people. Along with that, I didn't really want to cover Facebook, but the other thing people do is they confuse between Facebook and Twitter on how much they are attaching information to it. And in Facebook, even in your personal world, one thing I don't do, even though I have a pretty public profile, if you Google me, you're not going to find stuff from Facebook who I'm related to or who I'm friends with and how. Because you know how Facebook asks you, oh, is this your brother? Is this your sister? Is this your mother? Is this your cousin? Oh, how do you know them from high school? I don't do any of that. If people don't know how I know them, it's not it's not Facebook's business. So you're already putting a lot of information out there, so you can control some of these things without even thinking about it. So anytime someone's trying to confirm, if you get the automatic pop-up, do you really know this person from college or high school? You can just decline or just close the box.
Yeah.
So so you can be personal, but don't give too much information for no particular reason. You can be personal without giving away all of your ID.
Exactly.
What else? See, I know this is all very new technology for a lot of people. I'm going to pull up my email too. And they're probably tweeting. Linda, you tweet pretty frequently. So what are your rules of thumb?
Well, let's see. My Twitter is, let me think. I'm just thinking, I use different social media platforms for different purposes. So I think that's something for people to keep in mind, that, Facebook is very different from Twitter, and LinkedIn is different from everything else. So on Twitter, Facebook, I have a lot of personal friends and family, like you said, and Twitter is more professional. So, it's all about social work. I tweet links to articles, because I publish the new Social Worker magazine. And so I tweet out new articles from our archives. Sometimes I will tweet quotes, but I don't do that
All
too
the time.
often, as you
Right.
said. Just every once in a while, something for inspiration. Uh, when I'm at conferences, I do tweet things that are going on there. Um, and I will add people. uh, if I'm at the CSWE conference and I'm following the APM15 hashtag, I might see other people who are using that hashtag who I don't know or haven't already connected with. So that's a good way to find new people that you might be interested in connecting with. Um, so those are
Great point. I've also found especially when I'm hijacking hashtags, as they say, and
Mhm.
going along and seeing who's interesting in this feed that I would probably be interested in following, I'm a little more wary than I used to be about just automatically following them, because then I feel bad unfollowing them 3 days later. So
Mhm.
what you can do too, which is kind of a middle ground, is you like their last couple of tweets, but you look at their feed and you're like, well, I don't know. Let's just see. So you can just go and favorite some of the things that they say as well. Sometimes I forget to go back and follow them, but letting them know, hey, I see you, I hear you. And maybe you will or won't follow them, but it's also giving them something saying, hey, someone is paying attention to what you're writing, or I agree with you, or it's also a good way for me to remember, oh, I want to read that later. Like you said, if you've posted something from an archive, which is great. So if you have a blog or you post things, you can reshare a lot of those things. I know Rachel West does that as well too, and it's great because sometimes I'll forget, or I'm too busy to read that day. I see an article or something one of our colleagues have posted, and I want to read it, but I can't do it right now. So I'll either favorite it or go back and go, oh, that's right, I never read that one. So recycling is absolutely something that you want to do on Twitter, because people don't necessarily see everything that you post. You don't want to be too repetitive, but it's a great way to use things that you already have on hand as well.
Mm-hmm. I always look at somebody's feed before I follow them. I just don't go down a list of people and say, okay, follow, follow, follow. I always look at their feed to see,
Yeah.
if they're even tweeting, because there are a lot of people who have Twitter accounts, but they may not be actively tweeting. So
Yes, sometimes they'll just have that, kind of like LinkedIn. A lot of people do LinkedIn, but they're not active on LinkedIn. That's me.
mhm.
I have a lot of requests and messages on there, and I
Mhm.
hope that people aren't offended, but I don't spend time on LinkedIn, but you need to
Mhm.
have a presence in a lot of places. But yes, you don't want to waste your Twitter following or get cut off because you're following people who aren't actually doing anything. The only time that I do automatic follows is in person. So if I'm at a conference and I meet Yolanda, I'm like, oh, I loved her presentation, or I just really like this person I met. Let's exchange our information rather than a business card or in addition to. I'll
Mhm.
just follow you in person without checking any of those things because I like you. And sometimes you make the decision later, maybe I need to mute them. I like them, but their tweet style is not for me. But I mute them, but I don't unfollow them. So these are things that we're finding as we go, because there's feelings attached to this, and people are attached to their following, and they worry about their numbers.
Mhm.
Any don'ts in your mind? I shared my hashtag and the strange fragments that I don't particularly like. What are the things that make you go, oh, maybe not?
Mm. I don't know. I wonder if there's a point of too much favoriting or too much retweeting, where something gets retweeted back and forth and back and forth. I mean, it's good to have retweets, but I'm not sure. You know
You're
what I
actually bringing up
mean?
a great point of, I think that many of us who were trained earlier on are trained to tweet or share the same information on multiple channels. So maybe you're putting it on LinkedIn and Twitter and Instagram and Facebook, public Facebook, when now it's becoming more, don't do that anymore. I'm not saying so much like tweeting out an article or sharing an article, but if people are following you on multiple channels, it
Mm-hmm.
becomes way too much. So if someone's following you on Instagram, Twitter and they're following your Facebook page, you post the same content on everything, it's an avalanche of the same information and it's redundant and annoying. So I'm newer to Instagram, and that is my happy page. So I will put things that are semi-depressing, or if there's another school shooting or statistics. Every once in a while I will put something on Instagram, but Instagram tends to just be more about the photos, maybe more the inspirational stuff. So it's more my happy page, and I try not to do too much of the exact same thing on both. But it's hard because it's more time consuming.
Right.
Do you use any of the platforms like Hootsuite or Clout or any of the others that time tweets?
I have used an app on my phone and my tablet. I think it's called Schemes.
Okay.
Have you seen that one? You can use that to schedule tweets. I have used that.
I know Clout. I've tried a couple of them. I have not been consistent about it, but it will tell you the best time to tweet on Clout. I don't know about some of the others. It'll say, if you want to tweet this thing, you're best to tweet it at 5:45. That's when most of the people that follow you or the audiences that you're interested in will be on their phones, basically, because most people are doing it on their phones in the evening. So it depends on your time zone as well. But those can be helpful, especially if you have a business that's related to social work or what you're doing. You're trying to get the message out there. I just have not been very good myself at doing that. It's pretty much on the fly. Yeah. And one thing I notice people do too, on conference, that's one last tip. When you're at a conference or you're on a Twitter chat, I notice people will give a warning to their followers. For the next hour, this is going to be very busy because I'm involved in this Twitter chat for 8 p.m. 15 or whatever. And your followers are more forgiving because it's going to be out of context sometimes. They don't know what you're talking about and you're going back and forth. But you can mitigate a lot of that, I've realized, when you use that @ sign. So if we're in the same Twitter chat, I can @ sign Linda Grobe, and I can respond to you with the hashtag at the end. And so everyone still in the hashtag conversation can see it without all of my Twitter followers having to read it. So I've started using that more. So I'm not inundating my Twitter followers with something that they just don't care about for an hour straight. That way I can be involved in the conversation with the hashtag, and then personally responding to the people that I'm conversing with in the Twitter chat. And that seems to have helped quite a bit as far as being able to be involved, and then using favorite too. Because a lot of times you just want to know, especially in a Twitter chat, I read that, but I'm not going to retweet 45 things in that hour time, because that also goes in my follower feed. So just be mindful of the people who are sitting there having to read everything you're posting, or it's going by their screen, is a suggestion I'm giving. So you can be active in Twitter chats without flooding your feed.
Yeah. Good point.
Well, I got to meet you finally, Linda.
Yeah. This was great. And are you going to Denver?
I am. We're doing a session on Saturday at 12:45. It's one of the hot topics for wanted social workers on Capitol Hill. So trying to get social workers involved, and micro as well, micro, macro, everybody. Just trying to, spread the word on why macro matters or how to make a difference that way.
Yeah.
So, and you're going to be there?
I will be there.
Great. Yay. So I'll meet you in person.
Great. I'll be in the exhibit hall. So.
Okay. All right. Are you going to have a new social worker table?
Are
you going to have a new social worker table, or are you representing others? Okay.
Yeah.
Wow. Bye. All right, everyone, if you want to ask either one of us questions, you can always tweet us. And my personal email, which I don't mind you sending to, is KristieHolmes@gmail.com, which is probably the easier way to get a hold of me, and I will respond. I'm also happy to send along the PowerPoint slides for anybody who needs them. I'll find some way to archive them or put them up on Google or something so that we have them. Linda, how should people best contact you?
On Twitter, I'm @NewSocialWorker, and I can be reached at lindagrobman@socialworker.com for email.
Great. Here. One last thing. Okay, so I think we're, okay. We actually have a few questions. All right, let's see. I'm a little confused about hashtags. Can you do brief hashtags for dummies primer? We covered some of that, Melissa. So if you're still confused about hashtags, let me know. The biggest tip on that is move the hashtags to the end of the tweet as much as possible. And only, I would say, don't use more than one hashtag in a sentence. Hashtags are more to categorize what you're saying so that people can find it. It's not to clutter up your sentence and make it hard to read. All right. So I think, yeah, and we covered most everything else that's here. All right. Well, thanks everybody. It's 10:43 and we were pretty efficient, maybe too efficient and too fast, but we can always do this again. Thank you, Linda. I'm so glad you joined us.
Thank you.
All right. See everybody later.
Okay.